So good afternoon. My name is Thangarajah, for those who don't know me. I'm the Research Director for CIAIRI, the Center for Industrial AI Research Innovation, who is hosting this RMIT's AI for Industry Day. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming you all for a exciting program ahead with some talks mixed with the panel discussion, which you've probably seen already. And I'll be a sort of an MC today, just keeping proceedings in order. And to kick things off, though, let me first welcome Professor Juerg von Kaenel, the Director of the AI Center.
Do we have the clicker? Welcome, everyone. First, like to acknowledge that we're on the grounds of the Eastern Kulin Nation, the Woiwurrung and Wurrung language groups. RMIT acknowledges the traditional custodians and their ancestors of the lands and waters of Australia, from wherever you may come from. We have a jam-packed program this afternoon, and I don't expect you to be able to read all of the things, but roughly we want to showcase and to look at AI in industrial use. We have speakers from industry who are going to talk about the challenges with AI. We have speakers from RMIT, jointly with their industry partners, who talk about real projects they have been working on in this space. And we have industry speakers talking about challenges. And then we have a number of demonstrations at the back of the room as well as outside during the coffee break as well as during the networking reception. Please go look at some of the exciting projects showcased here. I'd also like to particularly thank our sponsors, Bentley Education. The fact that we have coffee is due to them. Please enjoy the coffee and please go look outside and have a chat with Sri from Bentley. And then for the networking event, we have the Cremorne Digital Hub, a big initiative from the Victorian state, which RMIT is one of the lead universities in this, and you will hear a little bit about it just before the networking reception. So, just to set the stage, those of you who are kind of with gray hair, my age, may remember back that AI has a long history of overpromising and underdelivering, and that's why we had AI winters. Started in the 60s with McCarthy saying, we're going to have a computer smarter than a human within 5 to 8 years. That didn't quite work out, and we went into the first AI winter. Then things shifted more to expert systems. They also were hyped a lot. Some of them were fairly good. Some of them didn't quite work as well, didn't quite deliver, and we went in the second winter. And during that time, the field grew in many directions and in many parts, and we saw things coming along. But you couldn't say that you were doing AI during that time. That was just not something you could talk about. The first kind of public big thing was Deep Blue, computer beating a chess champion, but that was very specific to a particular game. And then by 2011, Jeopardy! The first time somebody beat this, and this is a weird game. Instead of asking a question, you give an answer to which you have to find the question. It's all kind of convoluted from an English point of view. Nobody really understood why that was such a big deal on TV. But that all of a sudden allowed people to say, we're working in AI. And the field started to explode from there. Big data, deep learning, AlphaGo, generalized AI started to come back as a thing. And then end of last year, things exploded. First in the artist community with DALL-E and Midjourney, kind of generative AI. And then everybody is talking about ChatGPT. And I'd like to kind of think about this in terms of the Gartner hype cycle, you know, the peak of inflated expectations. I think they're a balloon high above that peak currently in terms of it. So the big question to me is, will we reach escape velocity, or are we going to the next winter after this because it won't quite deliver what we think it does? I'm somewhat optimistic because we have made a lot of progress in many of the fields. Now, part of it to me seems a bit like I've seen this movie before. Now I'm dating myself. On the left side, you see some of the tools I grew up with in school. We were the last class who still got taught slide rules. Calculators, really, really bad. They were forbidden. You couldn't use them in school. I still learned technical drawing, descriptive geometry. That whole set of jobs disappeared. They're all now CAD/CAM people. That has all moved to the computer. Now, the number of people doing this is much bigger than the people doing technical drawings. So jobs actually didn't go away. They changed, and there's more of them now. I'd like to do photos or pictures. The bottom you see one of my kinds of pictures. I take hundreds of pictures and then blend them together in a day to night. This is the Moomba festival just before we went into lockdown. You see day on the left side, night with the fireworks on the right side. Tried to get Midjourney to do something similar with the aerial view of Melbourne City with a day to night. Not quite there yet. Or I'm a lousy prompt engineer, one of those two things. We'll see. But there's obviously a lot of discussion in this. And that's why we decided to put on a panel this afternoon to really look at this from an industry point of view. So that will be a very exciting panel. I think in this, partially a bit like a modified version of Clarke's third law. Any sufficiently well-trained model will look like it's intelligent or is indistinguishable from looking like it's intelligent. We'll see how far we get in this. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dheeren Vélu. He is the head of innovation from Capgemini. He is also the head of the industry advisory board to CIAIRI, and a large number of industry representatives from a broad part of the industry are part of this board, and they have been extremely helpful in shaping this particular day-to-day with putting up challenges, with working in projects, and you will hear from a number of those speakers as well. With that, I'd like to hand over to Dheeren.
Good afternoon, everybody. Such an honor to be back on this stage. It's a special about, all of the stuff that has so much meaning. There's apparently fractals involved in the design here, and there's some Irish background to the whole colors. It's a beautiful space. It's a great privilege to come and speak here. Excited to kick off the AI Industry Day as well. We have a whole series of events and talks lined up, as Juerg sort of outlined. So do go and check all the demos. Look at all the things that the RMIT colleagues and other partners have put together, some demos at display. I spoke on the stage 4 years ago, and we spoke about the very topic, developments in AI.
And come to think of it, what a different world of AI are we in today? Just in 4 years, things have just gone from a certain stage in development to just skyrocketed all kinds of expectation. AI as a technology continues to, there's this immense industry adoption. It continues to be a force multiplier across industries. If you thought, it's gone from a stage of POC and experimentation into operationalized, industrialized, productionized versions of implementation. And this is happening for about a decade now or so. So it's gone into the mainstream kind of adoption. If you thought 2010 was about perception AI, AI that could make sense out of images or text or all that kind of information, 2020 onwards has become the year of generative AI, as Juerg touched on. I think ChatGPT did a really brilliant thing. It's a very clever way of taking one of their best models, putting it under a chatbot packaging, and then giving it to the general public. I think it was one of the most powerful AIs in the hands of general public. I mean, I think no other AI developments had that reach. I think it was just the simplicity of the interface, something that we're all used to, natural language text, just asking questions and getting back responses and drilling down. I think that's what made it a sort of a global sensation. It spooked and spooked the industry. There were board meetings held in universities and schools to understand how it affects education and the way the learning happens. Investors, large companies called for board meetings. Google called for a meeting to understand if this was the beginning of the end of search. And even Alphabet, Google's parent company, they lost $100 billion with a faulty demo of their equivalent of ChatGPT, Bard. I don't know how many of you all caught that news. That's how powerful and impactful this is in the industry. So coming back to the industry adoption, I think AI has penetrated as a skill across all of the industries. It's no longer a standalone kind of a skill that is looked for. It is part and parcel of many other job types and occupations. Yes, with the generative AI, there has been new interest and new confidence and new sort of interest to explore some of these AI solutions. But I think there's been a steady development anyway. Always also sort of really there's a massive demand for AI skilled professionals. There's more number of job postings, as you would have seen. And like I said, it's about having AI skills in existing job occupations. For the first time, I think in history, sorry, John, industry races academia in terms of all of the research and development that's coming out. So if you take just the machine learning, research and machine learning models, in 2022, academia produced 3 significant machine learning models. Industry produced 32 of them. And the sources from the AI Index 2023 from Stanford. And it's a no-brainer. Building state-of-the-art AI models require a lot of resources. They need access to large sets of data, large sets of compute. A lot of money and energy is involved in this, and these are inherently, that's possessed in greater amounts by industry than not-for-profits or academia. AI assistive tools. I don't know how many of you all heard of Copilot, or it's an assistive. So basically, Copilot is a natural language to a code generator. So it takes inputs in the form of natural language. So it could be problem statements in the form of natural language, and it creates solutions in the form of code. So it basically can generate code. Developers using assistive tools like that can do the same coding task in half the time. Can you just imagine that? They can do it in half the time with using assistive technologies like that. And not just that, they report that they feel much more productive, much more efficient, much more, there's a sense of good feeling about using these assistive tools. And I think in the next 1 or 2 years, we'll see many, many more such assistive tools coming. Think Copilot for financial analysis, Copilot for real estate developers, Copilot for lawyers, etc. So there's going to be a lot of these kind of very specific, domain-specific assistive tools coming into the market. I'd like to touch on 3 macro trends. I mean, I think this is what really is fueling the growth of AI and all of the developments that's happening. I'd like to unpack, what I call the 3 C's: code, cloud, and compute. It sounds boring, but bear with me, I'll unpack this very quickly. And it's important to understand the convergence of these macro trends that's playing a big role in the AI development. Take code, for example. 2017, Google released this paper called Attention is Everything. I don't know how many of you all have read the paper or know of the paper. This changed the game. It introduced a concept called transformers, not Autobots or Decepticons, but a deep learning model or a neural network that is capable of understanding context from sequential data. This changed the relationship we have with information, fundamentally changed the relationship we have with information. And transformers also underpin what's called a large language model, or an LLM, that many of you all here would be familiar with. LLMs are basically a language model. They can process language, they can understand and make sense out of language and various components of the language. They can summarize, they can predict, they can do various things with language. They can search, extract information, etc., and also generate text. A lot of companies have been developing these language models, and they sort of use what's called a library of information. My apologies for dumbing down some of these things. I know I'm in a room full of highly accomplished people and experts in this space. So it uses a large corpus of information to make sense of these languages. And a lot of big companies have been developing these language models, like Google, DeepMind, Huawei, Baidu. There's umpteen number of language models that are coming out there. But what really caught the attention of everyone was OpenAI and their GPT series. Again, must have been chatbot, the chat GPT, and how they released, how they go to market sort of influence. But let's take OpenAI and GPT, and just to try and understand the evolutions that have happened in such little time. So in 2018, GPT-1 was born. I'm going to look that side. It had 117 million parameters. It was trained on 117 million parameters. Parameters, simply, they are characteristics in these models that sort of is used to understand various components of the language, the relation between words, etc. So theoretically, the more parameters, the more accurate and the more better the model is. It had 117 million parameters. It was trained on a corpus of what's called a book corpus. So basically 11,000 books were used to train the system how to understand language. It could do some pretty remarkable things. It could understand language and even generate coherent language when prompted to. And in 8 months came along GPT-2, only in 8 months. The number of parameters used in GPT-2 is 1.5 billion parameters, 10 times the size of GPT-1. And the data sources used to train GPT-2 was web pages or web crawls. So basically, a bunch of web pages were shown to the model, and it learned from that. It could do some sophisticated language processing now. It could also generate language, but could do some more sophisticated comprehension of language. And then came along GPT-3, 2020, 175 billion parameters. So you see how exponentially these model sizes are growing and the accuracy thereof. And GPT-3 was trained on anything that is crawlable. So any data source that was be able to use as training data was used as training data. So Wikipedia pages, internet, web pages, everything, the movies you watched, the social posts you made, everything that was possibly can be used for training was used for training. What GPT-3, now GPT-3 could do a lot of things like we just discussed. It could generate even code, it could generate language, it could understand context, etc. But it introduced a concept of reinforcement learning, or sort of human in the loop, just to feedback to the system. In theory, this is a great technique. It's a good idea. You don't want some random model to go and, just hoover up all the data and suck up all the data and learn from it without any supervision. So in theory, it's a good thing to have a human in the loop and feedback on how this training happens. So there was a team of, you'd imagine there's a team of humans that were involved in this kind of feedback learning. But the question is, who are these people? What kind of worldviews do they bring? What bias did they carry? How representative they were? We'll hold that question for a bit and we'll come back later. And then I think in November 2022, ChatGPT came along. Like I said, this was the most cleverest way to take an AI development to market. It was a global sensation. It still is a global sensation. It revolutionized the way we talk with AI, the way we communicate with these AIs, complex AI models. It was the most viral app in history. In 5 days, it had 1 million users in 5 days. And in 2 months, it had 100 million users. Just to give you some context, it took 2.5 years for Instagram to get to that. Maybe similar time frame for Netflix to get to that. This took 2 months from launch to get to that user adoption. And the growth hasn't slowed down. Just a few weeks ago, GPT-4 was announced. GPT-4 now brings in a sort of a web of parameters of a few trillion, 170 trillion. It gets a little murky from here on. It's a web of parameters now. And it was trained on 170 trillion parameters. It can do some pretty amazing things. I've just used some visuals there to give you a sense of guidelines on how big these models are growing and how quickly they're growing. I don't know how many of you all saw one of the co-founders of OpenAI sort of go under the hood of GPT-4, and he presented some of these capabilities. It's mind-blowing. This happened 5 days ago, I think. He did a TEDx session, and he sort of spoke about some of the features. And he calls this a very historic moment. He thinks this is a milestone, in our sort of progression towards AGI. And you'll see why. GPT-4, you can fact check now. You know how with GPT, if you use ChatGPT, you ask something, it gives you back the information. You just take that at face value. You can't really challenge that. With GPT-4, you can ask the AI to go and do a fact check. So it has browser capabilities and search capabilities. You can go and fire off a few searches, bring back all that information, say, here is why I think I came up with this answer. Okay, and it's got image generation capability embedded. So it's got DALL-E embedded if you use DALL-E. It can, you have the ability now to check the prompt that actually the AI constructed on your behalf before it fired it out. So you have now an opportunity to interject and perhaps tweak it, but it's also bringing some kind of transparency to how these systems are working. It could do, it's got a Python code interpreter, so basically it can understand code and generate code, like I just mentioned, using the codex models. It can do data analysis. It can produce some really complex graphs from structured data, unstructured data. It can do medical hypotheses. It can process scientific papers. All of this was demonstrated. And the most amazing thing that Greg Brockman demonstrated that I found really fascinating and sort of really changes the game is it can automate workflows. So in this TEDx session, he demonstrates how he wants his AI to create a recipe for the event that he was speaking at. And obviously, it creates this beautiful, detailed recipe. And he instructs it to say, I want to go shop for these ingredients. And it goes away and creates a shopping cart using a third-party application. So it's now instructing another application. And the best part was he didn't even say, I want you to use this application to buy my shopping. It decided that it needs to use Instacart in this case, creates a shopping cart, and just asks for his permission to go and complete the purchase. And then he further sort of asks it to go and tweet it. It goes and constructs a tweet. And it says, I'm ready with the tweet, can I publish it? What I'm trying to get to is, you see now the AI is able to control and instruct other applications. I think if you extrapolate that a little bit, AI can now control other AI agents. There could be several levels of this AI chain happening. And how does that change the way we work? How does that change how we collaborate with these machines? It's no longer you ask a question and you get a response back. There's a chain of things that's happening in the background. We'll touch on a little bit, perhaps later in the panel discussion, on how the human-machine collaboration happens. But that's such a fantastic point to make note of. Okay, moving on. There are tons of models now. You got text generators, GPT, Bloom, etc. You got image generators, DALL-E, Midjourney that Juerg showed, Stable Diffusion, and a few others. You got models that can generate videos. You got models that can you got generators that can synthesize voice. So Microsoft's Valley can synthesize voice with 3 seconds of sample voice data from you. You got data. You got models for a whole raft of things. You have models that can predict every structure of protein. You got dedicated models for the medical community. You got one even for the climate community. Well, what I like to draw your attention to one particular development here, one particular model. It's called Gato. It's from Google's DeepMind. This is what is called as a generalist agent. And what Gato can do is it can play Atari, it can stack blocks, it can caption images, it can have a chat with you, it can send instructions to a robotic arm and control a robotic arm, all by the single model. So, a true sort of a multimodal model coming out to play. And that's again another great step forward in artificial general intelligence. Just coming back to the trends very quickly, I spoke about 3 trends, and the second one is compute. So there's some massive developments happening in the background. This is not so much in the foreground, but there's some massive developments happening in the background with compute. These are, there are dedicated computer chips, as you know, designed for processing AI code and machine learning training, etc. There's some massive developments happening here, and these chips can be chained together, and you can come up with any amount of compute you want. Just to give you a sense, ChatGPT used 10,000 chips like this to train its model. And where do you think all of these things are stored? It can't be on your laptop, your home computer, or your workstation. It is in the cloud, and the only way you access this amount of compute is obviously through cloud. These large language models reside in the cloud, and if you have to use and access them, you have to interface with the cloud. And cloud's getting very complex and sophisticated. It's only a few players in the field who can actually deliver cloud, who can actually create these cloud environments and maintain them. And these cloud companies are giving away cloud for free almost. Although it costs about 30 cents for one chat with ChatGPT. That's going to come down drastically very, very quickly. They're giving away the space free because of the downfall of opportunities that could come out of developments like this. Data is going to be the biggest bottleneck. It's the only one that's going to stop us. It's the only one that is slowing us down from producing some more powerful AI systems and models. Anything is trainable data, like I said, your web activity, your social activity, the movies you're watching, the eyeballs you're tracking with your headsets, wearable devices, fitness, all of that can be used as training data. So there's a mad rush, in a way, to acquire as much data as we possibly can in as quickly as we can. So with this mad rush, obviously, it comes to there could be some unethical ways of how data is acquired and used and used for training. So there are a lot of ethical concerns that come about, and these are concerns that we need to discuss, we need to talk about, we need to be aware of. And there are bias. There's bias in these models. There's black box nature of this. There's so-called AI hallucinations, etc. But here's a good example. This is one of the researchers, Matt Corrad. He tricked ChatGPT in giving him detailed instructions on how to make a bomb. Just by posing that he was a researcher and he was studying the safety side of things. Just by using some clever prompts, ChatGPT ended up giving him a detailed instruction of how to make a bomb. However, the very next day, that was the same prompt did not give you answers. Thankfully, someone was involved in the fixing of that problem. But there will be gaps like this. There will be holes in the system, as it refines and takes shape. I think, in spite of all these ethical challenges, which we will talk about today and the rest of the sessions, I think the net impact will be very positive for our society with developments like this. I mean, the business consultant in me tells me of all the opportunities and all the you know the economical benefits that this development brings about. But the technologist in me also tells me that there are risks associated with it. There are some very bad negative disruptive impacts that could come out of this thing. But overall, I am sort of very cautiously optimistic, and I think if we sort of approach this in a very responsible way, there could be a lot of benefits for society and humanity. I think it's our job. So leaders like us and people like this in the room, it's for us to engage in these discussions and discuss and bring your point of views, talk to other leaders. Throughout the day, you'll have opportunities to indulge in conversations like that. So do have that exchange. I guess with that, I'll conclude my talk. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the speaker. A little present. Call it the at least currently still AI-resistant gift. A little puzzle. There's 3 pieces. All you have to do is get it flat into that triangle. As far as we know, there is no model which and like any good AI thing, it is biased. In an unscientific study, for some reason, women are better solving it. Exactly why. And then the higher your math education, I'm sorry, the worse you are at solving.
I should add, by the way, that these puzzles are handcrafted by Juerg himself. So you should look up the puzzles that actually Juerg makes. He makes puzzles, and this is one of them. So thanks for that, Dheeren. That's a real great segue for the panel discussion that's going to come ahead for us. But before we get to that, we've got some project showcases where we want to, again, showcase the collaboration between industry and RMIT researchers. To kick us off, the first talk is by Julian Fogarty. He is the Chief Product Officer for IDOM Innovations, and he's going to talk about AI in automotive as relevant to his team and the work that he's doing with RMIT.
Thanks, John. Fantastic to be here. I was expecting a bit more space. Hope everyone's excited about today's session. It's an incredibly exciting topic for us all to be exploring and to be talking about. And as we saw from Dheeren, there's some incredible opportunities in the AI space out there. I'm going to bring this a bit back down to earth and try and speak to some of the more practical uses of AI in business today. So I'll talk through a couple of our little case studies so far, and then also a quick case study that we're working on with RMIT in particular. I've also got Mohammed Fard here, who's Professor of Engineering, who's working on that project with us. So if the questions get a little bit technical or focused on the research, Mohammed might be called upon. I'm not a technical person, so can't claim any expertise in that area. So I figured it was important to explain who IDOM Innovations are. Most people won't know who we are. So we're a corporate venturing arm of IDOM Inc., which is a Japanese listed company in the automotive space. So we're basically charged with solving pain points in the automotive industry using technology and creating businesses, profitable businesses. So we've had the joy as a 2-year-old business of exploring a few different areas and landing on a business that we think could scale up. Our first business or flagship business is AutoFlip, which is really a quick, simple, easy way to sell cars. We connect people with our 550 plus network of dealers who will bid online to buy a vehicle. Pretty simple model, but quite disruptive in the space, a space that was owned really by the classifieds area, being car sales. So more about advertising your car. This is actually getting the deal done. So what does that look like in a practical sense? So there's a seller. We've got two types of sellers. So it could be private sellers, you or I, also corporates, so enterprises. So rental car companies, fleet companies have fleets of cars that they want to then get rid of. And we will then, through an online mechanism, allow you to upload details of your vehicles, and then we've got ready buyers bidding who within 1 hour, 24 hours, whatever the cycle is we deem, will bid and buy your vehicle. So pretty simple concept and seems to be working really well. So a business that is only about 18 months old, we're already transacting well over 500 cars a month, and that'll double within the next 3 to 6 months. So we're really in that scale phase. So within that context, it's all well and good to be pushing, I guess, this model, but an online method of selling and buying cars requires transparency of information, simplicity, in an industry that probably isn't well known for that, particularly transparency. So we've got to create a model that allows sellers and buyers to be confident in selling and buying a car without kind of sight unseen. So we've put in a number of steps and processes and technologies that make that easier, but we've also looked at AI, in particular around image analysis, predictive pricing, etc., to make that true in terms of transparency and simplicity. So some of the simple examples today, and none of which will surprise you, but nonetheless really important in achieving the outcomes of a seller and a buyer. So first is very simple, which is rego, registration, number plate recognition and masking. So when people are selling online, they don't want really images of their car with registration because they're worried about identity fraud and the like. So we've got a simple tool using Google Vision to identify it as a registration, identify the plate number, and then mask it when it's up for sale. But so simple use. We've then found obviously that sounds simple, and like most of these things, even more complex when you have different photos from different angles with different lighting. We've got cars with decals on them, and we don't want those images. So we've had to then focus on training that model, and the challenge of training a model is getting the data to train it. So we're fortunate that we get a lot of volume through our business, so then we use that to train and improve the model. A more interesting case is really around AI image analysis for vehicle condition assessment, so the exterior of the car. So based on a few photos, we will run it through the AI model, and it will identify where you've got damages, the type of damage, and the intensity of that damage, which is critical for our buyer network to know that they're getting the car as described. We've got two versions of that, and I guess what's interesting in it is that when we first released it for our private seller market, they don't really want to take the perfect photos. They're kind of rushed through. So we've found that the quality of image obviously then impacted the model's ability to correctly identify damage, and its accuracy was not perfect, but it still gave a guidance to the buyers. Where we've actually found it more useful is in our, I guess, more formal inspections. So a lot of, in particular in the commercial market, we'll do actual inspection, let the AI model, based on some photos, identify those damages. We can then review it, either say it's got it wrong or it's got it right. So we're constantly adapting the sensitivity of the model. So really to take a process that would take 30 minutes to be done in a matter of minutes. So it's more cost effective and often picks up things that a human eye doesn't. That, as you can see there, it'll identify where the damage is, so that the AI is used in identifying the different parts, so in the first place, and then identifying whether it's a scratch or a dent or a bird dropping stain, and then what the intensity is, and then we can obviously work out what's the amount of damage. Last one is pricing. That was more a, obviously we want to be able to give people a prediction of the price they'll get for their car. There's a lot of lessons in that. It came down to the realities of it, it's going to take us a long time to teach a model. We needed to have good quality data, and in the automotive industry, we don't have that. So in the end, we actually decided to buy off-the-shelf solutions to support us in that place until we could build the model out. So there's a good lesson there that it doesn't always work. So moving on to where we're actually focused now, which is doing a condition assessment of engines. So another area where we want to do it online is that you can basically, we don't want to have people have to go to a mechanic to get their engine assessed. That's a pain and difficult. So we're working with RMIT to develop an AI-based model to assess the condition quality based on the sound. So whether that be a rattle, meaning there's some degradation of the engine, or whether there's a sound that means that the timing belt's going, we should be able to identify that based on that sound. So we worked with RMIT and some pre-existing IP that they had in this application called Noisam, to be able to identify sounds and to then distinguish what that means in this context. In some ways, I guess it's a bit like Shazam, but in actual fact, it's not. So Shazam is obviously the same concept of listening to a sound and identifying it. In this case, it's using audio fingerprinting, so it's just saying, do I get an exact match? Therefore, I know it's this song. In this case, we've got to, it's be a lot smarter. It's got to listen to the engine sound and then break down those sound elements to then identify and diagnose what's the problem based on a learning algorithm. So that's where we're using Noisam. So if you can imagine, you've got your phone, you can turn the car on, record it for 10 seconds, go to the front of the car while it's idling for 10 seconds, go and rev the car at 1,500 revs, 3,000 revs for just a few seconds, and then the model that we're now working on with our RMIT team will strip out those sounds that are associated with different engine problems, and then have the smarts to identify the level of degradation in that area, and then obviously either diagnose it as a healthy vehicle or a defective one. Simple in concept, obviously much more difficult. And I think some of the key elements that we've found, this works, is around getting the right volume of data, having expertise to be able to tell us, well, what sounds mean what across that volume of data. There's different engine types, so it's diesel, gasoline, electric now. So what do we do with that? The sounds, and how do we, treat an idle, stable vehicle versus a vehicle that's driving, which might have different performance. So as always, there's a lot of things you've got to work through, but we're working with the team on that now. So love to have a chat with you afterwards if you're interested, and we can explain a little bit more about it.
Okay. And next speaker, Juerg's going to chase you, Julian, to hand over the puzzle as a gift. Our next speaker is Pubudu Sanjeewani. She's from Smart AI Connect. She's a machine learning engineer, and she's working with RMIT researcher Azadeh Alawi, and they're going to talk about their project.
I'm going to present how AI-based video technology like Smart AI Connect for reshaping the future Sorry, so I'm going to speak how AI-based video technology is being used by Smart AI Connect for reshaping the future of Australian healthcare. Uh, Before moving to today's topic, I will give you a brief introduction of myself. So I'm Pubudu. I have a PhD in AI from Central Queensland University, Australia. And also, I was a recipient of an Australian Research Council Linkage Project Funding Scheme, Stipend Scholarship, as well as an International Excellence Award for my PhD. And at CQU, I work at the Centre for Intelligent Systems with the Department of Transport and Main Roads and the Australian Road Research Board, who were the industry partners of my PhD. And also I have engaged in these companies in Australia and as well as in Sri Lanka. Also I have provided my collaboration to these machine learning and AI-based projects. Yeah, so I was invited by Dr. Asadeh Alavi in RMIT to do this speech today. So I will give you an introduction of herself as well. So she is a lecturer in AI at RMIT University with a PhD in AI as well as a master in IT. So she has engaged herself in developing novel machine learning algorithms as well as applied them to real world problems such as person identification, bioinformatics, and medical image analysis. She also has engaged in a variety of research institutions listed here. I have also listed some of her publications related to surveillance system and medical image or data analysis. Okay, so now let's move to today's topic. So who is RM Smart AI Connect? So Smart AI Connect is actually facilitating the fusion of iPro AI edge-capable security cameras as well as AI machine learning models, also video management systems, IoT data platform. So in providing that fusion, we also help you to merge and also to manage and monitor the data interoperability, security, ethics, compliance, and governance of AI models being developed on edge devices. So we also help you in developing AI applications in these domains: public safety, healthcare, smart cities, and logistics. And these are the partners of our company. So Smart AI Connect is a well-established company. So among these, these three companies are internal partners: KJR, DataV, and Smart AI Connect. So KJR is actually a well-respected software assurance and a security provider with over 100 plus staff across Australia, as well as DataV is developing a health database for AI applications being developed in health domain with over 20 plus staff across Australia. And Smart AI Connect, in partnership with, in collaboration with these partners, is developing AI applications and providing end-to-end solutions for AI applications being developed on IP security cameras. And I must also mention that I had the privilege to work in all these three companies. So what is Smart AI Connect AI framework? So this is it. So the services actually we provide at Smart AI Connect are basically twofold. We help you in framing the model to be deployed, and also we help you to monitor the deployed model. So we basically provide AI management, AI governance, AI assurance, and AI reporting. So I hope and I believe that this framework will be certainly helpful to integrate health and AI in future. And so these are some of the snapshots I have captured from the Smart AI Connect AI framework. Here you can download any compliance report and see all the deployments running within your organization. And this actually is a very important slide I should present. So these are the top 5 AI applications currently available in our AI model store. So I have involved in developing the first 3 AI applications you can see here. The first one is Hoon Detect AI, which we have been developed to detect hooning. So this is a smart traffic monitoring program which we have developed to infer when the hooning event is occurring in the field of vision. So this utilizes object detection and tracking algorithms to do this and send an alert to the destination set up in the Smart AI Connect gateway when a hooning event is occurred. And the second one is Slip, Trip, and Fall Detect AI, which is also a smart people behavior detection model, which we have developed to infer when a slipping, tripping, falling, or a fallen event is occurred in the field of vision. And the third one is hard hat and vest detect AI, by which we can detect the non-compliance of hard hat and safety vests. So in future we can integrate any other PPE as well, but at the moment we have the capability to detect non-compliance of safety vests and hard hats only. And so I'm really confident that we can use these algorithms, especially the falling algorithm for fashion falling, and expanding our digital health platform in future. And so who is DataV? So DataV is actually a company developing a health database with real-world data and for AI-enabled medical innovation. And also DataV connects the hospitals, doctors, and also the entire medtech community with their curated and enriched data. And also, they have developed a clinical data nexus platform by which they reduces the time and the cost involved in searching for clean, labeled, validated, and real-world data. So thereby, we can rapidly translate our research and product development into outcomes very easily. And so what is this CDN? So CDN is actually a digital and a dynamic secure health-related platform, and also a cloud-based platform, which we have built to service the entire medical community with actually real world and also de-identified data, so that we can rapidly convert our AI applications into more powerful tools. So at DataV, so they mainly focus on relational data, free text data, and video data. But with Smart AI Connect collaboration, now they will have the ability to have IoT data, image data, and audio data as well. So here you can see a picture of an ICU. So with the advancement of AI and machine learning algorithms, nowadays we have the ability to develop predictive and prescriptive models, and the data we a database is enriched with real-time screening of ICU data, which have been measured through ECG, ventilatory, cardiovascular, antibiotic, renal, and neurological measurements. Also, by developing predictive algorithms, we can actually determine the organ failure in advance, as well as we can allow time for early intervention. And also, by techniques like reinforcement learning, we can also do patient monitoring and also do diagnosis, as well as we can determine the drug dosage. So this is how big our database is. So it has almost all the data from Gold Coast University Hospital dataset, as well as it is enriched with Mimic Boston dataset. Also, it has some part of ICU CRD data. So it has more, approximately around 160,000 records. So this is our DataV platform. So it has electronic medical records and IoT streaming data. Then in collaboration with iPro, which was previously known as Panasonic, and Smart AI Connect, now they will be provided with audio and video data as well. So by this data science platform, so in future, we can do real-time reporting like patient monitoring, also do predictive analysis such as sepsis early warning and patient awakening. So with Smart AI Connect and data involvement, so we intend to identify and develop AI applications to identify these things. For especially for false detection, I hope I'm really confident that we can use the slip, trip, and fall detect AI, which have been developed at Smart AI Connect at the moment, and also for breathing rate, smart movements, and blood pressure check identification. Our partner with RMIT, who is Dr. Sade, is well expert and well experienced in this area. So I hope RMIT collaboration with Smart AI Connect and DataV, I hope so this will be, we can actually develop a meaningful and powerful tools in future. But when implementing this kind of an application, certainly we'll have some challenges of privacy. So because some medical staff tend to wear some tattoos and some masks, and some patients used to cover their bodies by some blood coats, and some people used to wear some high jewelry. So people de-identification will be facing some challenges in future. But I hope with Dr. Asade's involvement, so we hope we will be able to successfully overcome these challenges in future. So this is actually a video demonstration of the identification we have conducted at Mata Hospital as a private run. So finally, I will be talking about how RMIT, Smart AI Connect, and Data we are collaborating each other. So we already have started our collaboration, and in future we aim to cover the enhancement of surveillance video analysis, medical data and time series analysis, as well as medical image analysis. I hope the knowledge and experience shared among the three companies, as well as Dr. Asade from RMIT, we hope we will be certainly able to develop a very profound application for healthcare digitization in future. Thank you very much, and that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Pubudu. And next up, keeping you between coffee, is Sebastian Rodriguez to talk about a project that we have with our colleagues at DSTG, Peter Ross and Maria Vukovic, who's also in the room.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. As said, my name is Sebastian Rodriguez. I'm part of the AI discipline at the AI lab. I am quite aware that I'm now in between you and the coffee break, so I'll try to keep it in time. We'll present today some of the work that we've been doing in enabling human-machine teaming, and this is done in partnership with DSTG, so Defense Science and Technology Group. And when we think of teams, the first thing is, what do we understand about it? And what we think when we talk about teams is it's a group of people that are independent on their respect to their resources, their knowledge, and their skills, and they put it together to combine efforts to achieve a common shared goal. And I'm paraphrasing Thompson's definition here. Now, when we think of this team, this could be, for example, a group of first responders tackling some of the fires that we have here in Australia. And they work together, and many times they have been using machines in different capabilities, as Juerg mentioned earlier today. But in this case, when we think like that, is we're having humans, a group or a team of humans using machines as tools, and that's not what we're interested here. Actually, we're interested in figuring it out how we can actually put the machines as part of that team. So we don't longer think about a group of people, but actually a group of autonomous entities that are still independent with respect to their information, their knowledge, their skills, many times complementary. And how can they combine their efforts and put it together to achieve a common goal? And this is quite an important bit, having a shared goal of the team to achieve what they have to do. Now, of course, as we also heard today, we want this team to be collaborative, but we want them to be able to adapt to different situations. And we want it to be responsible about the ethical implications of what they do. And we want to be able to understand what's going on. They have the machines, so the autonomous systems need to be able to explain to us what's going on and what are the decisions, especially if they become critical and time sensitive, so that humans can relate easily to what's going on and trust and gain that trust in that machine. And of course, we want to be verifiable. We want to make sure that in certain situations, the behavior that we are observing is the one that we want, not only about the machine, but also about the whole team. So two main questions come to mind. First one is, how do we engineer the AI in a way that we can put models in that system, and actually there are models that humans can relate to. They use exactly the same way of thinking or understanding the problem and the situation, so that when the AI explains what it's doing, well, they can understand where in that whole process of their collaboration they are at. Now, once we have those two models and that system working, we wonder, okay, what happens now with the whole team? Now, working? Yep. So when we have the whole team, how do we evaluate the performance? How do we verify that the machine is doing what we actually want it to do? How do we evaluate the performance of the whole team, including humans and the autonomous systems that are now integrated? And those two main questions are the ones that we've been tackling with this project. Especially what happens now if we start changing the scenario. It's not a unique scenario, but we want to be able to adapt to different situations and test that still the behavior is verifiable and what we want to do. So regarding the engineering side of AI, we've been working on the whole process of how do we create and deploy these systems. From the requirements, how do we create the requirements? How do we link them to the different AI components in a way that they are traceable so that doesn't become a black box that we don't quite understand why is the AI doing certain things. But it's actually something that we can trace to a human requirement. But those requirements that are coming from domain experts are gathered and used in a way that most software engineers can relate today, using mainstream practices. Once we have that requirements and we create the models, how can we actually test them and use so we've been working on test frameworks that we can run and execute and unit test each one of the individual modules as well as a system that works together, creating, using tools that we can relate to and most software engineers are familiar with, like JUnit, Cucumber, and they can be deployed in our current infrastructure using models or systems like Docker, have integrated IDEs that the mainstream developers can actually use. And changing, of course, the shift, because we're creating a little bit something new, creating AI that can think or use goals and plans and practical reasoning. So can we create programming models, new programming models that can link the way we think about a problem with the way we write that model for the AI. Putting all of that together, and that's what we've been working on the side of how do we engineer the AI. Now, the second question is how do we evaluate that? In collaboration with the SDG, we've been creating a platform that can help us to put together different scenarios and different contexts for the human-machine collaboration and evaluate the performance so that it's repeatable. So we have been integrating AI-specific platforms developed, for example, with SA, which is a programming language created specifically for AI, distributed AI systems, integrate a goal-oriented engine so that AI can reason in goals, plans, and the same way we do. Package all that in a way that we can deploy experiments automatically so that they are consistent and repeatable. Our partners can deploy it in their networks, and we can deploy it here and share the evaluations, knowing that it is exactly the same environment that's being deployed. And finally, be able to simulate a whole range of different scenarios using well-known simulators like, for example, AirSim. So this platform that the idea is that we can actually simply run a set of deployment infrastructure that can put together the environment that the human-machine team will work on. And we can do it consistently with just one set of instructions. Once that's done, the system can actually deploy the simulation environment. It can deploy even the interfaces that the human will use to interact with. And we can change specific components, either the AI, the interfaces that they're going to use, so that we can control the variables that we're changing and understanding exactly what's going on. Once that system is being deployed, the execution starts where the human has a specific interface and talks to the AI, but sharing the same model. So the AI that is executing and the humans share the same idea and strategies to tackle the problem that they have at hand. And then the AI is able to control the simulated environment to achieve the common and shared goal and actually see what's going on, and the humans can interact with the AI to change the behaviors that they expect. So just to summarize, we've been working in two main aspects. First is the engineering of the human-machine teaming, what is the software engineering process to create the AI from the requirement gathering through the whole process of designing, implementing, and deploying these systems in a way that we can test and validate the behaviors of the autonomous systems in different stages, the unit testing level, the integration testing, using always industry-grade practices and tools, something that most software engineers will be very familiar with, so that we can reduce the gap of what they need to learn and easy to introduce into current flows and infrastructure. We have a working platform to deploy different scenarios to evaluate the different conditions for the human-machine team, and then gather the data that we need to understand what is the best way of solving certain problems or tackling certain situations. And of course, we have tons of different work for the future, integrating more complex reasoning mechanisms. We're thinking about norms and social behaviors. How do we put them together so that in a way that the AI can understand, work it, and explain it to humans, automatic code generation. And of course, we're always interested in more scenarios and applications. So if you're interested in all of that, we have a demo today right there in the back. We'll be there to discuss what we've been doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. Amazingly, we are at 3:10 right on the dot, so fantastic. So on that note, I want to thank those speakers so far, and also let you know that if you have any questions, now's the time to grab a cup of coffee. Again, thank you to Sri and Bentley Education for sponsoring the coffee cart. It's the fuel that drives most of us, at least us researchers. So thanks again to Bentley Education for that. So please, on the foyer, there's coffee, ask questions, and also demos will be there at the back. And also outside, our robots are on display. Also, ST Solutions are out there with their robots as well. The RMIT soccer bots are out there on display. They're heading to France, to Bordeaux in June, and they're looking for sponsors. So go talk to the students out there. Thanks again to all of you for attending today's program. I hope you really enjoyed the first half of the program. I hope you enjoyed the coffee sponsored by Bentley Education. And let's kick off the second part of our program. And we heard today from the talks the importance of data, and Dheeren mentioned in his keynote as well, with the likes of generative AI, a key component of that is indeed data. And so to kick us off in the second session, we have Dr. Chris Butler from AU Cloud. Chris is the National Manager for IT Strategy and Productization, and he is well placed to talk to us and share his insights into data and the cloud and its importance today. So over to you, Chris.
Thanks, John. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about challenges that we have around AI and data in our industry. And we've got a little bit of a different twist. We've heard a lot already about how we use cloud to build AI models, exploit AI models. But the challenge that the company that I work for now really has is what happens when you're building the cloud? What happens when you're building underneath? So AI Cloud is really a niche business that we have. We do cybersecurity and what's called sovereign cloud. So this is cloud where you want to be entirely contained within Australia, where people want their security monitoring in Australia, so we can support defence, so that we can support the government, so that we can support boutique industries where they have to keep the data here, where there is a fear around what happens over the 10, 20 years when they know that they need to have continuous operations across no matter what happens in the world when we have this new great power competition. So we've been building out this business over the last 5 years or so. We're ASX listed, where we now have 4 sovereignty zones. So somewhere about 20 k's that way, we now have hardware in the data centre, as well as Canberra and Brisbane and Sydney. So when I said that we're supporting Australia's most trusted organisations, one of the things that we've been doing is when you go and vote, the computers that people use to count votes, we're monitoring the security in those systems. We're monitoring the referendum. Defence Forces health records sit on our systems together with our partners. People use our systems to manage legal discovery, to manage records that are coming out of policing organisations. When we think about that trust that they put in us, the question is, how do we take these services that we build, and what does that mean from a data sovereignty perspective? So when the people who put trust in us talk about data sovereignty, what they want to know is, where is their data going? Where is the metadata going? So this isn't just where their records are it's where the data may be flowing. They want to know that we have operational control of the systems in Australia. So it puts us in this unique position where we're having to build the same stack that companies like Vault Systems might do in Australia, but also a subset of what companies like Microsoft or Google or Amazon are doing as well. We want to make sure that we can draw a nice bubble around that and keep it all in Australia, or at least make sure data is only flowing one way into Australia and not flowing out. That's a unique challenge. Close enough? Okay, thanks. That's a unique challenge in our industry. It's not something that many of us face anymore. So what does that mean for us to data? It obviously means that we need to partner. So our company has partnerships with hardware vendors, with software vendors. And when we start building up this stack that we think about in terms of data, it doesn't just start at what you think of as the IT system. It starts down at, we need to understand how much power we're consuming from a physical data center provider. We need to be able to unlock our racks. We need to be able to manage these hardware appliances, whether it's compute, storage, networking, security appliances, virtualization stack. And as we build out these products across the system, what we realize is that everyone's claimed that they've got a single pane of glass, that they can have all of that data come together. In reality, it's not true. As soon as you put that business problem across it, which is we need to serve a particular set of clients in our industry, which is primarily critical national infrastructure and the federal government, that those single panes of glass are only really for one job. We need to pull that and elevate that up to serving our business, not their business. The other one that we have really is that this is an industry which is really dominated by machine-to-machine data. We got millions, if not billions, of records flowing across within our internal network every hour in terms of operational metrics, logs, and we need to be able to form a clear, coherent view to make it understandable for our relatively small population of engineers. We've got 70 people in our company. We need to be able to run this ICT system 24/7. And that means that we need to make it as simple as possible to digest. And machine-to-machine data is not really what you want. So it kind of brings the questions of, what do I really want to get out of AI in our business? So number one is service availability. People want our systems to be on 24/7. That's obviously an objective we have. The second one really is security and risk prioritization. Unfortunately, cybersecurity is almost completely non-functional. You don't know how much of it you want. You know you always want more. You want to be more cost effective. So we need to make sure we do it as effectively as possible. And the third one really is engineering efficiency or resource efficiency. So the one logo I put up here in terms of a company that we work with or a technology we consume is PagerDuty. I think of it like my enemy. At 3 a.m. in the morning, the last thing I want is my phone ringing with PagerDuty on it saying, something is wrong, please go and fix it. So the real thing is, how do we make something like this digestible to an engineer? It's been 5 hours since they've logged in. They've had a few drinks on Friday night, and all of a sudden they get an alert saying something is wrong. And this was from earlier today for one of our systems. It was 6 hours, so that's like 11 o'clock at night on a Friday night. There's been 6 million records which have been flowing us through the system. That's a subset of what they have to get and deal with. We want to make this as digestible as possible. So what do we think that we need out of AI? Stepping back, I've gone too far forward. Okay, so where are the biggest challenges in delivering the value that we have from this? The first one is really in these disparate data systems. So how do we start to lift this up and centralize it? That's really a core part of my job. But in terms of what we're trying to get to, it's really two objectives. We want to be able to see all the way through the stack that we have, through the security operations centers that we present out in combination with our SOC analysts to our end clients, so they can understand what the issue is in their systems, where they've been breached. We want to be able to balance privacy versus service delivery. We don't have complete freedom to profile our clients at the security postures that they're expecting. We can't send data everywhere offshore, and we definitely can't send it freely to a marketing agency. We need to understand how we balance privacy versus service delivery and still get that value out of our system and make it simple for our clients to consume. And the negative one I'd really say is, how do we work around vendor lock-in? The IT industry has had players which have grown up for 30, 40 years now, and they want you to be sticky. They don't want you to leave, and they want to create barriers around you adopting different technology. And what that really boils down to from an engineering perspective is, I want to understand when one of my engineers makes a change to the system, what the effect is of that change. We don't necessarily know how we're able to measure that, how to measure that easily. So I make a change, something might happen in 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 days later, which has affected that I've affected the outcome of. And that loose propagation of all these systems coupled together is what we're trying to measure over time. So where can we start to affect the change? One of the biggest things that has really been changing for our business and that we're trying to pull down is how we change the way we do work, how we make it more visible, and how we can know exactly what changed in our system. So the biggest, from an infrastructure provider perspective, when I think about AI and I think about the technology that is enabling AI, one of the biggest changes has been the emergence of the CNCF as a de facto industry standard. So the CNCF plus Kubernetes has meant that we have at the top third of our infrastructure where effectively we can start to leverage industry standards where we don't need to care about what vendors are doing because the entire thing has been standardized for us. And the standardization goes a little bit further because it also enables an operating model shift for us where we're starting to see where data visibility, like getting better visibility of our data. Where instead of relying on engineers to go into a system to make change, we know that those change, we know where we can measure those changes from. We know that there is one central point where we can measure the state changes to the system. So this is where we're starting to get some better ground truth in terms of the measurement, finally. We still know that these changes that we're making, we don't know the actual downstream effect. So it's not really gold standard data. It's gold standard data in terms of the way the system state changed, but we're not getting that proactive feedback into the system. But we are getting the ability to have better instrumentation and diagnosis all the way through the stack. So that change in operating model where we are seeing open source driving the enterprise software world is really making it the point where AI can start to make an impact all the way up and down the stack. Where previously the procedural elements of IT, you think about IT as being the most automated industry, really those little gaps that we have in between, we have engineers going in, touching systems, have really been causing us a lot of problem in terms of how we make this machine data really consumable. That change in terms of standardization, which is propagating down, is really making a difference for us. And finally, I think it's how do we start taking these technologies and processes and pushing them further down the stack. So we know that we can do this at the application layer, but in the end, I know that we have millions of dollars worth of tin sitting in data centers scattered around Australia, and I want to manage that as effectively and efficiently as possible. And that's where we're really trying to push in terms of the automation that we do, and then introduce AI so that we can more efficient with our engineering resources to make decisions about where we invest time in either automation, where the engineers spend time to make sure that our clients don't see any service interruptions going forward. That's all I have for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. So from that, we move to a couple of more project talks. And the first talk is from Theo. Theo's here. He's also another member of our industry advisory board from YepHome. And over to you, Theo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will be speaking to you all about AI in real estate and where the future will take us. My name's Theo. I'm a property developer by career, but I'm currently the BD director at YepHome. And yes, whilst I wished I looked like this, in the spirit of this event, this is indeed an AI portrait of myself. It was a best one out of 100 images, and it is clear to see AI has a ways to go judging by the other 99 I received. Before I delve into the incredible advancements of AI in the real estate space, I just wanted to address two elephants in the room. Number one, as other speakers have already touched on, no, AI will not be taking over the world, or your jobs for that matter. It may enhance or change your role somewhat, but I don't think we'll have robots selling properties for you or to you anytime soon. And number two, did I get generative AI to help me prepare the content for this presentation? I'll let you all decide that at the conclusion, or come chat to me after for the verdict. So who exactly is YepHome? YepHome is a PropTech company focused on revolutionizing the property industry, starting with the off-the-plan sector. We have a dual engine system that powers two parts to our platform. We have a Web2 software as a service component to service our business side clients, and we have a Web3 virtual component to service our customer side clientele. Some of the virtual products we provide are immersive and interactive, virtual reality tools powered by Unreal Engine, augmented and mixed reality tools, and also virtual building spaces, where you can get a bird's eye view on the building you are looking to purchase into. We are creating the digital infrastructure needed to remove the concept of borders around real estate. Imagine if you had a project, but had no limitations both domestically or internationally to view, sign, and transact on real estate. Or imagine if you were a buyer from Melbourne looking to purchase a property in a different state. With our platform, you can do just that, and that is the power of YepHome. To understand the role that AI plays in real estate, it is important to understand how the real estate industry operates as a whole. Real estate and all jobs or outcomes within it are driven by two main things. One is knowledge. That is understanding what you are purchasing, why you are purchasing it, and how to purchase it. And the second, often overlooked one, is emotion. We all know that real estate decisions are driven largely by emotion, whether that be in the form of an attachment to a particular area or solving the how and why we purchase property. Emotion plays a big part in the decision life cycle or purchasing of a property. Where AI fits into this process is largely on the knowledge front. Computers are able to do so much more than people when it comes to data processing and volume. The AI can solve for problems much quicker than people can, with the critical assumption that it has access to very large amounts of structured and unstructured data. Real estate professionals can capitalize on this point and use the knowledge assistance that AI can provide to become better professionals and focus more on the emotional part of the journey for the transaction. AI's role in this ecosystem will be to empower, not to replace, to support rather than disrupt. And now to the fun part. What can AI do right now in real estate to better help us as real estate professionals? Firstly, AI can become a powerful tool for smarter property valuations. Rather than relying on human valuers' best guesses, buyers and sellers can get a more precise estimate of what a property is worth. We're already seeing this being adopted by the big four banks and giving this tool out for free to the public to better help them understand if they're paying the right price for the market. Secondly, virtual chatbots and agents. There is always a mundane process required between agents and buyers to screen and qualify their buyers for a home. So much time gets drawn out sending information to people, gauging their interest, and not to mention having to physically meet with people. VR chatbots can help negate quite a lot of this work, leaving agents to prioritize building relationships with customers rather than the mundane small talk. And lastly, personalized recommendations. AI can troll through a potential customer's requirement, their budget, and other shortlisted properties to better recommend personalized properties that fit their criteria, rather than have them go through hundreds of homes that somewhat fit into some of their requirements. I'm sure that most people in this room have gone through an issue like that in some form or another. And so what are we doing with AI and how are we utilizing it? We have worked with SoftBank International and RMIT on a price prediction tool that helps you better understand what the future of property prices will look like for your local government area. It's a great tool for customers to better understand where prices will be going so they can plan ahead. We are also working with RMIT and other industry partners to bring an efficient virtual agent into the virtual spaces that we create for property developers. These agents help welcome, screen, and provide tours to clients to the point they are ready to chat to somebody. This will help infinitely with creating better communication with qualified customers, allowing the developers or agents to focus their strengths on the customer's intrinsic needs. And finally, we are looking and working to incorporate smarter search capabilities to be able to connect the right developer with the right agency to help sell their stock at volume and at speed, and further to help connect the right customer to the right project, completing the B2B2C ecosystem that we have set up. Thank you everybody for joining us today, and please be sure to come over to our table where we can give you a virtual tour. Thank you.
And the last of our project showcases, a showcase of a non-machine learning project with the company AOS. James and Koa over here, representing them, is Jessica Rivera.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jessica, and I am here to present to you. Let me works. Yes. That's the name of my talk, and some people may be like, that's a funny name for a talk, but that's a question that I get asked a lot when people ask me, what am I using in my projects? And I go like, oh, this insert old AI technique for solving a problem. And they go like, why are you not using anything more recent, like, you know, deep learning or ChatGPT or anything related to that? And we're going to talk about why soon. First, let me tell you, this is a project that I am participating in where Professor Sebastian and Professor John Thangarajah are working on in collaboration with agent-oriented software, whose folks are around here. So go chat to them. They are working on interesting stuff like everyone else here. So just some background. Yes, we know, and we have been talking about how machine learning is great for many things, and everyone is trying to learn it and implement it in their problems. It leverages large amounts of data, which many companies do have these days, and finds patterns, to find a solution to a problem. And it is great for some of these problems, given the right training and implementation, such as image processing, classification, and prediction. That's great. But it's not great for every problem. There are cases when you don't have enough data to train your model, or where you need to give proper explanations because of regulations or because your user needs to know what is happening. Some specific businesses have needs that aren't capturing the data that you have, and just some things don't always need to be learned. If you know, or if your expert owner or user knows that you need, for instance, a key to open a door, you shouldn't have a system trained for a very long time to learn that that's the case. So let's jump to our case study and the problem that we're solving here in this project. We're trying to find a way to manage a fleet of autonomous robots or vehicles. That's a photo there. You can talk to AOS if you want to know more details about that. And use them for an agricultural, as general as possible case study, where you have activities such as harvesting or watering a field or treating weeds that are dangerous to your crops, taking terrain samples, etc. This involves the management of resources and time constraints, as well as finding the right way to get from one point to another, or while you're on the way from A to B, you may need to do something else, and let's take this opportunity since we are here anyways. Ideally, you would also be able to model preferences, such as, do these preferably when humans are not around so that it's easier, so that you don't interrupt them or bother them. It also should react to unforeseen circumstances in the environment, such as, the weather is not good enough and you don't have a good GPS signal, and you don't know where your robot or two or more of your robots are. They may clash, they may not get there on time to do the thing that they need to do together. A user of this system should be able what is happening, what the robots are planning on doing, when they are going to do it, and also be able to modify easily enough these plans or the way these robots operate. So here's the part where I introduce the old AI. Our approach in this case is hierarchical task networks combined with constraint solving. The hierarchical task networks is motivated by the fact that AOS has been working extensively on a hierarchical model of AI called beliefs, desires, and intentions, and constraint solving to address the resource and time constraints in the environment. So a quick look at hierarchical task networks. They're a great way to leverage expert knowledge. So this is an agriculture study. We are, or claim to be, AI experts. We are not great at modeling or knowing the way an agriculture scenario works. They do, or the user that ends up implementing the system will have specific knowledge that they should be able to model in their scenario. It is user-friendly enough. It's more user-friendly than a black box system or a bunch of data. And it is, and I quote, easily modifiable, because it's not just like insert this bit here and then everything magically works. But it is easier than other techniques. I will show you if this works. Yeah, an example of a hierarchical task network. For our highest level task is to inspect an area, and that area may need to treat a weed or be watered. And then I expand on how you treat a specific type of weed. So you find a robot, and expanding that means checking some other requirements, such as, is your robot nearby or close enough? Does it have enough battery? Does it have the liquid that you need to treat that weed? And then once you found the robot, you drive the robot to the area, which involves some other lower level tasks, such as moving through intermediate areas. And then you go treat the weed. So this is a way that users can actually visualize what they want to do, what the system is doing, while this can actually be exploited from an AI perspective, and then generate a plan for one robot to move and go and do that task. Now, this is one of the tasks. We have many tasks, and ideally we want to have many robots doing them, so there's a lot of coordination and management that needs to happen there. And just quickly on constraint solving, we have used this in the past in other projects for resource and time management, especially for humans. It is an established tool, so there are a couple of open source and non-open source libraries and platforms that we have used in the past. It allows you the specification of constraints and prioritization of preferences, such as penalize a route that uses more than 90% battery so that you can preserve your battery for emergencies, and reward every harvest completed before a deadline. These are examples. So we have used this in the past. The specific tool that we have used is Optoplanner, which is an open source. It's based on Java. It is something that a Java programmer shouldn't have much issue becoming familiar with. And this is not the specific tool that we're using for this project, but we are using some of the concepts in order to implement this agriculture case study. So we have used this in the past to generate schedules like this one, where you have to address the needs of the students. This is from an example for OptaPlanner, so you can go check this out in OptaPlanner's website. But just to give you an example of what types of constraints we're dealing with, time availability of resources, such as teachers, the needs of the students, what do a student needs to learn, when they can happen, space management, workload, and so on and so forth, and some other preferences. So in conclusion, that's the project, and we hope to be able to merge this hierarchical planning with constraint solving in order to provide proper plans for the agriculture scenario with a fleet of healthy robots. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica. So that gives us some indication, hopefully that gives you some indication for the types of projects that we do with industry in collaboration with RMIT researchers. And we now move on to our final item before the networking event, which is sponsored by the Cremorne Digital Hub. And thank you, Suku and Olga, for your sponsorship on that. And there'll be a little presentation about what is the Cremorne Digital Hub just before the networking event. But first to our panel discussion, which I think is probably the event that most of you have been most looking forward to as well. And so the panel is following on from Dheeren's keynote earlier today on generative AI. So Dheeren has been introduced already, but he's also the chair of our industry advisory board. I'll say that again. We're very proud to have him as our chair. So Dheeren will chair this panel. So if I get you on, Dheeren. And joining Dheeren is another member or two other members from our industry advisory board, Hari Janikaraman, who is the head of industry and innovation and transaction banking at ANZ, Erica Dodd, who is the lead of the AI Institute at Deloitte, and Mihal Horev, who is an AI lead from IBM Consulting. And I will hand over to Dheeren to take over the panel.
Hello. Thanks, John. Excellent. Apparently, this is the most awaited event. Yeah, look, lovely to have you all in this panel. The panel is about, guess what? Generative AI, whatever that is. Hari, I've worked with you. I've had, we've had work-related discussion. Erica, I've known you from being on the board, all the exciting conversations we had. And Mikhail, you bring so much, really interesting conversation around the ethical side of things. So we'll delve a little bit into that. Just to start off the panel, right? I might start with you, Erica. Generative AI, just the overarching, what are you seeing? Because you come from a consulting background, you get to work with a lot of organizations across, across industry. What sort of emergence are you sort of spotting across industry? And where do you think are the disruptions coming from near term, long term? I think red means on. I thought red was off.
Red means on.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Great start to an AI panel, I know. So yeah, coming from a consulting background, we get the best and the worst of all industries. So I'm going to go for a bit more of an agnostic approach. So in terms of disruption that we're seeing with generative AI, to me, the biggest disruption we're seeing is that of thinking among senior leaders and executives. I would argue that someone working in AI and also those who are researching AI, sometimes for the last few years, it feels like you're the crazy person on the hill. Do you remember that YouTube video when there were guys tried to start like a dance movement? It's kind of been like that, but instead of getting the whole hill dancing, you've got a couple of other, like 5 other crazies on the hill with you. And that's kind of like what it's felt recently. But with generative AI, it's been thrusted so much into the main media. I mean, I've seen it on the Today Show even. People know what ChatGPT is, but what that is doing is it's disrupting thinking in senior leaders. There's now an expectation on senior leaders to be able to answer basic questions around what are these technologies, how is it going to disrupt my industry, what are the use cases, what are the risks, but also what are the foundational elements that I need to get right to go on our AI-fueled journeys. So a lot of the questions that are coming from our clients is around what is generative AI, and it's kind of like our gateway drug in a way. We're like, well, this is generative AI, but this is only the tip of the AI iceberg. Let me open up the full gamut of what's out there and what's possible. So that's the biggest disruption that I'm seeing in industry right now.
Yeah, I saw your LinkedIn post yesterday, Erica. Deloitte started a practice around generative AI.
We have launched a generative AI practice really focused around building out proof of concepts for clients, that real experimentation culture, but also offering labs.
Lab incubation.
Exactly. Allowing senior leaders, executives to get hands-on with these technologies, learn in a fun, memorable way, just to really break down that learning for them and get them understanding, excited, and joining us on the crazy hill of AI, really.
Amazing. I'm just going to turn to the room, just to gauge the room a little bit. Put your hands up if you've used ChatGPT or any forms of GPT. Wow, almost everyone, including that kid. Anyone who's actually working or experimenting, doing some work in applying GPT-like technology? There's a few. Mikhail, I'll sort of go to you with that. What's your view, Mikhail? What are you seeing in generative AI?
So I think, as Erica said, there's hype, and as an AI researcher, I'm excited that everybody is as excited as me on AI. That's great, but then we need to stop for a moment and ask some important questions. So the organization, it has a business strategy. How this AI investment is aligned with this strategy. Another question is, are you ready to mitigate for the risks that this new AI is bringing to your organization? So a lot of questions are actually must be answered before we can utilize this type of generative AI. But this appetite is really good because it opens doors for talking about AI in general, because when you are open to having discussions about how AI and automation can change things in your organizations, you find out that there are more traditional parts of AI, more traditional models that could be used now, immediately, that are much more studied, much more regulated, and you can implement it.
Yeah.
Just like that. So I'm all for it, and this is a very exciting time for us.
It is. It feels like, I'm just going to coin this word, AI 3.0 kind of a feeling, right? So there was AI 1 and neural networks and all of the old stuff that we, I sort of had some academic interactions in, and then came AI 2.0 when the bots came out, when Jeopardy, I think Juerg mentioned, and it was sort of a lot of chat bots that was happening. I think now there's a resurgence of interest in AI. Hari, I'm going to turn to you, but before you answer that question, Hari, there's some provoking things that's happening as well around this, right? There's some, there are things around stop, there's a call out to stop big AI projects, and there are signatures being gathered. And so at one end of the spectrum, we have all of these amazing developments and support from industry and really sort of coming together. And the other hand, you have this call out to stop all of this. I know financial services, your industry, Hari, I've had the opportunity to work in that space. You all are some of the earliest adopters of AI techniques, and it has mostly been behind the scenes. It's not the cool chatbot thing that you get to play with, but a lot of these things that are happening in the enterprise behind doors, maybe for a decade or more. So what's sort of your take on this new generative AI? Let's call it hype for now. That's happening.
Yeah, thanks. And I feel like I'm the least qualified person in the room because I have zero technical knowledge. My job is work with people like you to find solutions to real-world problems. And I think you picked the crazies for the panel because I was one of those people who danced when
I'm
it
a
happened.
computer scientist, not an ethicist.
So I remember very vividly when it came about. It was around 2015 when I heard about this and then said, why are we not doing something about this? So we started working on this since 2016. It's been in different forms of use, not as sophisticated or exciting as generative AI, but more traditional machine learning type of AI, which has been used in our industry for quite some time. And the key thing is, and it is all below the surface, and what I see the hype with generative AI is it has brought this technology to you and me as individuals, as opposed to sitting in the background and enabling things to get done faster, better, etc. I think that's the change which we are seeing. Just a couple of things, which may sound very obvious, but that's the case. For example, there is a lot of financial industry is still paper-based, right? I don't know how many of you realize that it is paper-based. So if you are, many of you went and had a coffee. If you actually follow through the coffee supply chain, it's all paper, right? And taking information from that paper and processing that information to provide financing to the companies who purchase coffee beans and convert those coffee beans into consumable coffee is done by banks. And that information, gathering that information from paper and processing that, making that into data and then processing that in terms of financing is one of the examples of where AI models are used, right? So it's very real, but it's also something sitting in the background. You don't necessarily see it. When next time when you go and drink a cup of coffee, I want you to think about that there is some small element of AI somewhere there in that process, right? So that's how we see it. It is something which has enabled us to continuously develop our products and services for our customers for over the years, and generative AI is just another tool or another significant step, I would say, in that direction in terms of what we can do.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm just going to go, so yeah, it's all behind the scenes. You still go to the bank, get a loan, pay your mortgage, and then at some point, I think in your life, some of us get to finish the mortgage or we recommit, but you don't really see what's happening behind the scenes. Probably there's evolutions and developments, by the month. You're bringing new techniques, not just for that, maybe for financial crime or by the day. I think someone today, one of our board members were talking about a cyber attack. You're constantly using more sophisticated tools, and most of the times it's got elements of AI that is sort of leveraged to fight against these. I'm going to talk about one other thing. I mentioned in my keynote session about the human-machine collaboration. I think there was another presenter as well who presented human-machine teaming. This is going to change drastically, right? You're going to have layers and layers. This is what I see it. You're going to have layers and layers of AI that talk to each other. How do y'all see this sort of fitting into an existing workflow? Mikhail, I'm looking at you. I'll probably start with you. What sort of changes? How do we best leverage? There's some things that humans can do really well and some things that AI can do really well. How do we make this teaming?
So we already see some, preliminary works that show that using these new type of tools, generative AI, we can reduce workload by 40%, right? This is not peer-reviewed yet, but these numbers are out there. And I think for that to actually happen, this interaction must start from trust, meaning the first component that we need to work on is education and enablement of our workforce. Because there are a lot of people that AI has never been part of their day-to-day work, okay? It's going to look so much different for them to be able to trust this new tool, but not to over-trust it, to make sure that they remember that they are the human oversight in that. We're talking about an enablement that must happen, okay? So that's the first thing. Another thing is communication. So communication can start from the organization. What does it mean for us? How we're using AI, and also for our customers, because if we're starting to use these virtual agents that are more loosely programmed, I'll call it, they need to know that they're interacting with something that is not human as well. These are the elements that I would start from. So these are elements that have to do with transparency, explainability, and then we will see the benefit of this new thing, this new technology.
Yeah, that's interesting, Mikhail. I'm going to open the floor for some questions from the audience. So keep your questions ready as we sort of discuss these topics. Erika, what's your take? You know, how best we integrate this into the human workflows?
I really want to echo the education element that you just mentioned. I think a lot of people don't really understand what AI does and the scope of what it can actually do. And I think some people forget that we have intrinsically human skills, such as really complex problem solving, harnessing our emotions, and for some people in the population, harnessing empathy. And AI simply can't do that. So it's that augmentation of bringing intrinsically AI skills and human skills together, where you're going into the age of with humans with machine collaboration, which is the real beauty. And the way that we talk to clients is talking about real world use cases where this has happened. And my personal favorite one is some work we did up with a university in New South Wales, sorry, RMIT, and it was looking at detection of an eye disease, which I can never remember the name of, so I'm just going to call it glaucoma for this conference. What we found is that when patients presented to a GP was able to recognize early signs of glaucoma 50% of the time. If that then escalated up to an optometrist, it was 72% of the time. And if it went to an ophthalmologist, it was 94% of the time. We were able to train a machine learning algorithm to recognize that 90% of the time. And if you imagine having that AI augment that GP experience, the 50% to 90% uplift in early diagnosis, and the net positive that that can create to Australians, especially in a very constrained healthcare system that we're living in, it's a really nice story. But another thing is that change management element. You should never just thrust AI at a workforce. You need to have a really well thought out change management program to complement it, or else you're going to get instant tissue rejection with your AI solutions. We've built some pretty wicked digital twin solutions for some iconic Australian clients, and you present it to the client and they go, I don't like that the interface is blue. And you're like, okay, we'll go fix that immediately for you, so you actually do adopt these technologies and it's not that instant tissue rejection.
Yeah. Thank you, Erika. Hari, would you like to comment?
Yeah, sure. There are a couple of areas where I think the interaction takes place. One is, what we have seen is AI can process a vast amount of data faster and better than what humans can do. But then you come to nuances. And when you come to those nuances, I think that's where you need a human expertise. I'll give you an example. I talked about the coffee supply chain where you process a lot of documents, right? So today, if it is all processed by humans, and remember, banks are in the business of lending money, right? So pretty much every decision we make means money is going out somewhere, or someone has to pay someone else, right? Because it's real stuff. People really care about that stuff, as you can imagine. And so the accuracy rate we are talking about is 99.99%. Anything less than that is a failure, right? Yeah. And humans are able to do that. So we have been training machines, and machines have been doing it, and this is just not, I'm not speaking for my bank, I'm well connected to the industry, most big banks do this. The best machines have ever been able to do is 90%, right? Wow. The reason for that is if you take your coffee, for example, coffee comes from lots part of the world, but a typical supply chain in a coffee, you wouldn't believe this, but it's probably processing to 3 or 4 countries, right? Wow. simple, that's one of the simplest supply chains. If you're processing through 3 or 4 countries, every country has its own rules, own regulations, different language. If you take an invoice, I'm sure most of you know what an invoice is. If you go to 10 companies and ask for 10 invoices, their own invoices, you'll have 10 different patterns, right? And then you multiply that with language, font, and you have different stamps. It just creates that complexity. So what we have found is having the first pass by the machine, the second pass by the human is the best outcome.
Yeah.
Right? So that is where, so one is the data processing capability with the human nuance is really, and that is especially when it comes to interpretation of these rules, interpretation of certain words, which are quite unique. And people write things in different ways. So that's one. The second one is I think, and this is more of a prediction for generative AI because I've been using it as most amateurish way, is you need someone to interpret what AI is telling back in order to for people to make sense of it. Now, in terms of how do you digest that information, what it provides, and then take that information and explain to people this is what it means. And I think that there is an element to that which we need humans to interact with machines to make it. And I really like Theo's presentation where he talked about it is enhancing our capability to do better things, not completely replacing it in our cases.
Yeah, it's more, I touched on an assistive, AI as an assistant as well, assistive tools like Copilot that I touched on, there's going to be a few more. Just sort of moving on from there, and if we move into, the future of workforce, what is that going to look like? I know there's all kinds of chatter in the internet around jobs being displaced. Of course, every big technology does rattle that a little bit. There are jobs displaced, new jobs are created. I just want to see how y'all see this in your respective industry. Erika, maybe I'll again start with you this time.
Absolutely. There's a lot of fear around that, isn't it? Yeah. Most of our clients are like, but it's going to disrupt our workforce and my people are scared. And you're like, it's all right, come on the journey with me. We're in this together. Like, we're all in this together. For me, it's about redefining value and generative AI helping people to become more productive. And I hope you'll be okay with this, but because, when you just can't remember some lines from some really cool research, I've got a little thing that I'd like to read from our recent Access Economics report on that topic of productivity. So work done by Deloitte Access Economics has highlighted 2 sides of thinking about wages. They represent income for people on one hand and a cost to business to the other. If we drive productivity and link wages growth to productive effort, then we can indeed pay for higher wages to sustain people's incomes while not burdening the cost side of the equation. For a number of decades, we drove up the profit share in our economy, but this has not translated into a big enough lift in investment. At the same time, we have seen the emergence of a disconnect between wages and productive effort. And to quote Pradeep Philip, who's head of Access Economics, Australia is not investing enough to drive productivity. This has to be our big focus. And to me, there is such a nice shoehorn into generative AI for that. As someone in the consulting land, I love it for slides and icons, which I know a lot of people think that's all we do as consultants. But it can do 80% of the effort for me, and then I can just go in and validate those efforts, and that's a huge time saver for me. Also with that autonomous code generation, a huge time saver for our workforce, and it gets our people back to doing more impactful and meaningful tasks that can actually drive value while having this kind of like Copilot. Microsoft have nailed it by calling it Copilot. I'm always like, it's Maverick and Goose, it's brilliant, but it is a Copilot in our day-to-day jobs. And that can really drive that productivity element.
Yeah. Mikhail, your views.
All that she said.
All of the above.
Yes, the amazing thing about it, and I'll focus only on the large language model part of the generative AI, though we can talk also about the visualization. So everywhere that language is involved, which is everywhere, this is going to change things. So application modernization, as Erika said, it's a huge thing to be able to move from legacy code to modern frameworks is mind-blowing and is going to cut a lot of work. So what it's going to actually cause is people would have to be, to find their expertise in their profession, because all the tasks that are mundane and tedious and you wish that someone would have automated for you, then these are the low-hanging fruit that are probably going to be automated as soon as possible. And for me, as someone coming from software engineering background, we're kind of used to that in our profession, because once upon a time we used to write ourselves so much lines of code that we don't do anymore. And these things keep changing and changing. I think what is going to be different is that a lot of professions that thought that these type of things are so far away from them are going to be impacted.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll sort of also become very ubiquitous, right? In some sense, you'll have applications that are embedded with these AI capabilities that you'll be using day to day. It could be your Microsoft Teams. It could be, the ones that you're using, a PowerPoint presentation. So maybe every time I do, I don't know, my opening slide agenda, it probably does a little bit of brainstorming for me. It just preempts a few slides and templates, and then I go in and think. Would you want to add something?
I just wanted to add, I would totally agree, because generative AI has lowered the bar for entry to access AI, but it has also heightened the bar to differentiate your services when everyone can do the same thing. So what we're really encouraging people is to look at your data as an asset. How can my data be augmented by generative AI to actually drive differentiation and meaningful insights that will ensure my organization's relevance in 5 years' time? And that's a really tough nut to crack at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a different perspective. I fully agree with what they are saying, but I also want to go back, and Professor Juerg mentioned this in his opening remark as well. I think the history is full of examples of where jobs change, right? I'll give you 3 examples. One is, at the start of Industrial Revolution, there were no alarm clocks. So you had people who went up to everyone's window and knocked on their door to wake them up, right? That was a real job for decades, right? Not making it up. Second, I come from a family of bankers, right? I'm the 5th generation banker in my family. Sad. But but I can tell you, I remember very well when I was a teenager that Indian banks, and I grew up in India, so Indian banks were computerized, right? Massive resistance, because people said computers will take away our jobs. But if you actually go back and look at it now, computerization of banks has led to way more products, increased productivity to your point, and there are more people working in banks in India than there were in the 90s, right? That's another reality. And then just my own personal example, my first ever job was I was given a piece of paper to a contract, and I was given another 20 pages, say, hurry, read these contracts, read the piece of paper to check whether this piece of paper matches the contract, right? This was back in 2002, right? That job doesn't exist anymore. It's gone, right? But I was a group of 20 people employed at a European bank to do that, just 2 decades back. So I think we should not be fearful of losing jobs, because we'll always, human beings, I believe, has the tendency to find something bigger and better to do. One last comment, if you permit. I'm a big sci-fi fan, right? I love Star Trek. I love Isaac Asimov.
5th generation banker, and then he's also a sci-fi fan.
Maybe the one thing we can think of, so one of the things in this typical Star Trek society is people don't work. If you are a Star Trek fan, you'll know this. People don't work for remuneration for a living. They work to pursue their passion.
Yeah.
Maybe AI, this is the start of humans being enabled to your point, Mikhail, you're not working to make a living, you're working to pursue your passion. Maybe this is the start of it. So let's think positively.
4 weeks. Yeah, no, excellent. That's a great perspective, Hari. I know you sort of came through another dimension. Mikhail, I'm looking at you, and you probably know why. I think we need to dig a little bit into the ethical side of things. Obviously, it's every time there is a discussion about generative AI in any of the meetings, strategy or business review meetings that I'm part of, and by the way, almost all the meetings have an agenda item on generative AI or AI now. there's in the same breath there's also ethical things that we need to think about, concerns, the data, the way data is acquired, or the black box nature of these things. There's so many things, gender biases and other kinds of biases, diversity and inclusion issues. I'll let you start where you want to start with this, and then we'll drill down the conversation, Mikkel.
Okay. I'll start. So the issue with generative AI, generative AI is based on these. Generative AI is derived from foundation models. Foundation models, it's not going to be theoretical, don't worry about it. What I'm trying to say is that it's deep learning models, meaning models that are built on hundreds of billions of parameters. This makes them black boxes, meaning we don't know how they get to a decision. And more importantly, the way they are trained is by a method that is called self-supervised. So there isn't a ground truth, okay? Erica has talked to me before about the project they did with physicians. So with physicians, when we train a model, we want to train it against the ground truth. After 6 months, the patient was healthy, the patient was dead, okay? This email is spam, this email is not. There's a ground truth behind it. The problem with foundation models is that there isn't a ground truth. And this could result in hallucinations. Did anybody hear the term AI hallucinations? Okay, so for the rest, AI hallucinations means that these models, and we saw a lot of examples with that in ChatGPT and with Bing and with Google. The idea is that it spits out things, falsehoods in utter confidence. I heard someone call it mansplaining as a service, which I found hilarious, plus accurate. So these hallucinations are a big deal because it looks right. You want to believe it, but you can't necessarily do. That's one. Another thing is copyright data. These things are being trained on massive amounts of data. Some of it is copyrighted. This means that they can generate information that is bound in copyright. This is a big risk for organizations. So this is another consideration you need to take into account in development. Another thing, carbon footprint. These models are huge. This means that to train them, you need a lot of computer power. Even for simple inference, you need a lot of power. These are considerations that you need to take into account because they're going to go into your ESG report at the minimum. Lastly, there's the issue of inequity. Hopefully it won't be an issue for much longer, but at the moment, these models come from very specific, huge corporates, and they hold the power. And this is a situation that, as a human, I'm not a very big fan of, because we believe that these things should be at the hands of everyone. And last one thing is the way that it was trained, they did have people in the loop, but these people were from countries in Africa, in Asia, and they were trained to find harmful information, but the toll it took on them and the small wages they worked for is also a consideration that at least we need to have in the back of our head.
Yeah. I think the copyright thing you bring up is also such a topic of debate now. I think more in the creative, I think it's really sort of the biggest discussions are happening in the creative space, where, all the stuff that the AI can generate, whether it's imagery or vision or sound or music or whatever, where are all these models coming from? Who are the original creators of this? If Midjourney can create those beautiful imagery, where are the original artists? How do you train these models? So I think that's another aspect. And the sustainability, the carbon emission of these models. I was reading somewhere, Mikhail, Bloom, one of the LLMs, apparently the training for Bloom is the same equivalent amount of 25 air travelers traveling between New York to San Francisco. That's the amount of carbon it emitted for one training cycle. So, when you talk about reducing air travel and other things, it's just to give you a comparison. Erica, your views.
My views on ethics, firstly, I'll preface this with I'm not an ethicist. I partner with people who are much more intelligent in this space than I am. One thing I will say, though, is that it does appear that sometimes we have a bit of an image issue, that sometimes us working in AI, that we're literally living in a game of GTA and there's no rules and regulations and everything's just wild. But industries do have regulations, and when you deploy your AI solutions, you need to be adhering to them. It's not the Wile E. Coyote putting a dynamite in and just running away and laughing. So we do adhere to regulations, and there are also a lot of ethical AI frameworks that we adhere to. We have one at Deloitte, the government has its own guidelines. So it's not always a game of GTA, is what I would say on that. But one thing I would also echo on that is just the diversity in people who are building AI solutions, and that we are still so underrepresented as women in this field, and it's causing bias in our AI models.
Yeah, definitely. Can I add one more point?
Yes, please.
Erica reminded me, regulation is key here. Okay, if we go back to, I wasn't here, but the first days where cars became popular, so thanks to regulations, we have seatbelts, we have traffic lights, we have speed limit. Now, these regulations, they're not coming from the car manufacturer, or in this case, from Microsoft or Google or OpenAI. We cannot rely on them for self-regulation. So this is where my work in consulting, Erica's work in consulting is so important, to make sure that we incorporate these safeguards in the organization, and on one hand, and on the other hand, we need to understand that the regulation is just a matter of time. We know that the EU AI Act is just around the corner. It's going to transform regulations worldwide, similarly to what happened with GDPR a few years ago and how it changed data privacy regulation. So it's just a matter of time until we see these regulations and penalties here as well. So the ostrich algorithm, meaning putting your head in the dirt and hoping that it won't come, is not very effective.
Yeah. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I agree with both the comments, but I'll come from a different perspective. So there are three things from me, from my perspective. Is one is, again, if you turn back on history, pretty much every development has come followed by regulation, right? So in my own industry, if you take banking, very different to what it was even 10, 15 years ago. And if you go back a century ago, it was even very different, right? So I don't think we should be fearful of doing innovation because the regulation doesn't exist, because if there is no innovation, there will be no regulation. So I think that's fine. I think we just need to ensure that it happens at the similar pace, follows very quickly. That's one. Second is coming from an industry where we deal with a lot of customers, and I know it's very different in other industries. From our perspective, you don't use the technology for the sake of using the technology. You use the technology to solve something for your customer, create efficiencies in your operation. So if you use that type of a lens to develop and innovate, correct, you end up in a box where you're doing the right thing. Yeah. Right? You just go and don't go do something saying that I want to do something bad for our customers because that's bad for our business. Right? So I think that perspective is one. Third one is a bit out there, is I don't think we should be making the same mistake we have made in Web 2, right? So why are we thinking about ethics in AI to be solved only by regulation. Regulation, I think, is just one tool. Are there other technology tools out there where we can use? For example, do we need to decentralize governance of AI? Right? Should you, like, I was invited to another RMIT chat. We are best friends these days. And one of the ideas we were talking about is, why can't we have decentralized distributed ledger or blockchain-driven AI development, where it is not just, to Mikhail's point, not 2 or 3 big corporations who are determining what AI should be consuming. It's a community of people who have an interest in that. So I think we should also open our mind. Again, I'm not a technologist. I can only come up with these weird ideas. And why are we not using technology to solve that problem?
Yeah, now those are good weird ideas, Hari. I was reading somewhere blockchain, particularly with provenance of where this training data came from. You could solve that using a technology like blockchain to see, hey, if I'm generating this image, take me back down the chain to see where this originated from, or several places this thing came from. So you could do that through blockchain provenance and stuff. I'm almost ready to ask some questions, take some questions from the audience. John, if you can pass the mic on, but I'm going to pose one more question to them whilst you get the mic around. Let's say we meet here 2024. We are AI Industry Day 2024. What are we going to be discussing about? Hari, quickly.
I'm very hopeful that we will have a real use case, commercial use case on using generative AI. That's what. Maybe ChatGPT 6. I don't know. It'll be better than this, but I'd like to present a real use case using that technology.
Yeah. So I know it's a little hard to hear back our voices here. If we are having this panel discussion in 2024, Erica, next year, AI Industry Day RMIT 2024, what is the biggest thing we're going to be discussing about?
Ooh, spicy. I think we'll be talking about, might do something controversial. No, don't do that. We'll be talking about the real world. Actually, we'll be talking about how many more organizations in Australia have moved up the maturity curve on terms of their AI journey, because their leaders are now waking up to the opportunity. So we'll be having a lot more use cases and celebrating a lot more in Australia.
Nice. I wish we were talking about how we used to work 5 days a week. And we don't do that anymore. That's just my personal. Mikhail, we'll go to the audience next, but yeah, I'll let you complete, or at least have your.
I think it's going to be AI in light of regulation. I think 2024 would see much more regulations coming from different countries.
Great. Excellent. I'll open the floor. We might take a few questions. John, you tell me when we stop.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, speakers and panel. It was lovely to hear your thoughts. But I'm wondering about one question that we know that the countries and every country, they are growing in the AI field and they are investing a lot at the global scale. So like, we are in Australia right now, so are we in the same level, or are we worried about, is it actually, are we meeting the industrial regulations? So like, what is the scope here for us? Because I'm myself doing Masters of AI, so I want to understand what is the scope for AI if we compare it to other countries at global level. Thank you.
Who wants to take that? Where do we stand? Yeah, go on, Hari.
I can speak for my industry, which is a financial services industry. Like I said, use of AI tools is very much prevalent in the industry. So there is a lot already happening, and I'll see that continuing to grow. I think financial services is usually in the forefront of adopting these types of technologies.
I would say that Australia as a whole is underinvesting in AI. We do an annual State of AI report, and an interesting narrative emerged this year, and that was Australia is on par globally with AI deployments, but we're not seeing the value being derived from those deployments. And we're kind of hitting a wall, and that wall is how do we then scale these solutions across enterprise? But Australia fundamentally is not investing enough in AI, and I think that goes back to us kind of resting on our laurels of being the lucky country, and we haven't really been pressured to innovate for quite a long time, and that is something that critically needs to change.
Great. Another question? Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Hari.
I think my question's been answered, but I was talking about robot replacing human with a retired relative. She was a secretary. So she said, when I was a young secretary, people said computer will replace typewriter. So type is not required, but I still work until 65 as a secretary with computer. So how would you comfort her nowadays with robot replacing humans?
So, if I just paraphrase that, you're saying, it was said that computers will replace typewriters, but we still sort of work on computers, do typewriting or at least typing, a lot of typing kind of activity. So you're asking, will robots completely replace humans? Was that the question?
Someone say in the old days, computer will replace typewriter. So I will lose my job as a typist. But I'm still a secretary until 65 nowadays.
You're just using different tools.
Yeah. So if someone say, I'm scared of robot replacing me with the same scenario, how will you comfort that person? Don't worry about it.
I think that comes down to, it is always going to augment your jobs. Yeah. And look, the World Economic Forum has come out with some reports on it is going to displace a number of jobs, but there's also jobs that are going to be fueled by AI and other emerging technologies that we don't even know about yet. It's going to unlock industries, markets, business models, just like every other technology has done historically. The computer is before my time, but I have read news headlines about how computers are going to make us lazy and all that. It's exactly the same. It's just like a fear cycle, but good will come of it.
Yeah. I think history is repeat. One more example. So when photography first came into existence, artists were protesting, saying that it is the death of art. Right? It was completely opposite. Right? So I think that is. It is going to happen, but it's just going to make us do better things. I'm optimistic.
Yeah. I think one last question. We'll take one more. Oh, there's a few more. Okay.
Hi. This is Sri from Bentley. And first thing first is very, very interesting conversation. Thank you for all the expertise and wisdom there. Dheeren, in your keynote address, there was a point what you made was slightly disturbing to me, is about 2 versus 32. If you remember, the academia doing 2 machine language was 32 in the industry. I'm of a very strong opinion that any research, any advancement, any innovation, there has to be a partnership between the industry with a problem statement versus academia. 2 versus 32 is either the perception or the drive of the industry is wrongly placed, or the academia do not have that level of competency and speed and urgency and commitment to do it across. What is right?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting statistic that I came across as well, Sri. I think if you look at, it's more the cost to do research in this particular space. Do you think any academic institute can compete with a Google's DeepMind or Google Brain team and the investments that happens there? I don't think so. I think there's millions and billions of dollars being spent in this region. Of course, if you take a much more broader spectrum, where's all the research is coming from? Probably any day academia will have more research. But in this particular space, industry has sort of really taken over, primarily from the investment. I think it's a flow of money more than anything. I don't know if any of y'all have any views on that, on why industry is coming up with all of these new innovations.
Before you jump onto the view, I'll add a little point there about, usually in the research in the pharmaceutical industry, aerospace industry, they also have a compelling problem statement. They have a bandwidth issue when it comes to finding someone who can crunch the number, someone who can sit down and write the algorithm. It's not the cash, it's not the money. The industry has a problem statement, industry has the money, but they lack the bandwidth of resources who are subject matter expert, who can actually bend down their head and work on. And if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, there are more than 7,000 medications in Australia which are waiting for approval, for the innovation. 6,400 comes from labs of academia. So I don't know where in AI, particularly, one way of actually making AI much more popular, much more responsible, is taking down to the mass in the academia and make them work on, rather than industry, and then, like Hari said, a couple of leading organizations holding it very close to them, opening it up to academia and make them innovate.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Thank you.
One more, John?
Yeah, hi. Thank you all. It's a fascinating discussion and amazing backgrounds for all of you as well, so thanks a lot. I'm an associate professor in design and run a national program on halving food waste by 2030. So that's a big world issue and a national issue that we're trying to solve. So my interest is in wicked problems, big issues. And we have quite a few of those kind of centres around the university doing stuff in different areas to mine. So my question is really around, where do you see, beyond these menial tasks you've discussed and described, that's going to make life easier in our workday lives, where do you see AI in the future potentially contributing to big issues like climate change, poverty, and God forbid, conflict and war even?
Big societal wicked
Yeah.
problems.
What's that?
Like, where do you see AI sort of contributing when it comes to big, wicked societal problems? Yeah.
Yep, I think it's a great question. I don't think it's necessarily in the realm of generative AI, but we already have AI in place that is trying to do that. We have examples of AI involved in optimization that has to do with how we deal in a world of limited resources, regardless of what these resources are about. Another topic that is relevant is, and one of my research topics is causal inference, which is about what is the most effective action to actually get the impact that you'd like to see. So what we do with causal inference is to try to help policymakers to choose the right policy based on historical data. So if you tried this in that area and that in another, but you want to see how it would have impacted the entire population, this is something that you can do with causal inference, which is like this marriage between AI and statistics. So I'm actually optimistic.
For me, my favorite thing that we've recently built, and where I'm so glad we can finally talk about this, we released a client impact story on it last week, is some work that we've been doing with Compass Group, who is a large multinational food distribution company. And we've built a product called Meal Vision. And this is out the back of the recent Royal Commission into Aged Care, which found something like 60, 70% of our aged care residents are at risk of or have malnutrition. So we've built this really awesome solution, which is kind of like a little telescopy looking thing. And what happens is we put a plate of food that will go to an aged care resident. It scans that food and comes up with how much is actually on the plate, like 30% protein, 50% carb, 20% vegetable, and has the nutritional breakdown of that. The plate is then rescanned once the aged resident has eaten their delicious meal. And it's like, okay, they ate all of their carb and all of their vegetable, but they didn't touch their meat. So perhaps they're impacted for protein. And then automates a report to then send to their nutritionist or their loved one to keep them in the loop so that they understand the health status of their loved one that's in aged care. And I just love those real world impacts that AI is having. And that one's in an Australian context, which I think is even more awesome.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you want to add anything, Hari?
No, I can give another example if you have time. So one of the areas where, and this is not something which we do in our bank, but part of the broader work which I'm involved in with the industry is on the environmental impacts. And one of the uses of AI I've seen, and it is actually in production, is using satellite imagery to determine where sheep or cattle should graze to get the best outcome in terms of land, how do you ensure that the land is protected. So there are plenty of examples like that. They're not the popular version like what we are seeing in ChatGPT. Maybe that will come in the future, but they are more image processing type of AI, which directs the farmer to say, okay, this is where you need to send your cattle for grazing next month. So there are examples of that.
Excellent. I think this has been the longest panel. We sort of only 10 minutes over. But I'm going to wrap this up. Mikhail, I know you, Erica, Hari, you're all going to hang around for a bit, so people can still come and talk to you all, have a little more question and chat around this topic. Thank you so much, Mikhail. Lovely to have you join our panel. Erica, fantastic insights. Good luck with the generative AI practice in your organization. Hari, fantastic to hear from financial services and your background as well. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for patiently listening to the panel. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Dheeren, and the panel. And just before we close off the networking event, which is sponsored by the Cremorne Digital Hub, just Olga would come across and give us just a very quick overview of what is the Cremorne Digital Hub, because I'm sure you're wondering what it is.
Hi everyone, and on behalf of Cremorne Digital Hub, I would like to thank RMIT and Suka, our representative from RMIT and CDH, to putting together this event, amazing insights. And I would also like to share, just because we always been asked about what Cremorne Digital Hub is, what we do, and how we actually collaborate with the universities and industries. So my name is Olga, and I'm a marketing communication lead for CDH. And, sorry. It's not, there you go. Oh. So Cremorne Digital Hub is a unique platform that brings together industry, universities, technology, and innovation to create new ways of growing digital economy here in Victoria. So our key role is actually concierge, and what it means, it's quite complicated, but if we break it down, it's quite easy to understand. So we will just make sure that all the industries, companies, and individuals, tech talents, they know what's going on in the digital economy and they're prepared for future jobs. So it's already been mentioned before, ChatGPT and everything, and people scared, they don't know what's going on. So we will be there to explain and actually prepare people for future jobs. CDH will be involved in commercializing ideas, create and facilitate different programs in conjunction with our amazing partners that RMIT is one of them. So we will run and support different activities like AI for Industry Day, different programs, and we will build our own programs as well in conjunction with our partners. So we will also have some funds available that we will be able to invest. So even whether you are a larger corporate or your small or medium-sized business or your startup, and you have a solution, for example, or you have a problem that you need solution for, this is where you come to CDH, and we will help you to connect with different industry players. Boring stuff, but really important to know, pillars. So digital economy, it's with the support of the Victorian government, we collaborate with universities, industries, and startup, and not just collaborate, we connect them together. And a global reputation. So we just want to make sure that Victoria is the place to be, place to work, upskill, reskill, and run your own business. We also, CDH will be providing some training, upskilling, reskilling existing talent. So just make sure that you're prepared for all work, all the opportunities that will be in the future, not being scared, being prepared and excited about it. We also will be lifting the standards of general knowledge and area-specific knowledge. So regarding its AI or cybersecurity, that's something that's new, you will be prepared, so you will be provided with the support from CDH, mentoring programs, innovation challenges, and other programs. And we also explain how individuals and business can interact with emerging technologies. Again, ChatGPT, it's an amazing example on how people, even executive level people, they don't really know how to interact, or they're probably learning about it. And we will be that place where you can come and learn more. Well, first of all, growing jobs. So we have a great KPIs that we need to create 10,000 jobs for Victorian digital economy, and we're on the mission. But we just started. So we're really excited. We just started. We're growing internally, and we're also growing externally. However, unfortunately, I cannot mention lots of specific things that we're currently working on, but it's so amazing programs are coming soon. There will be around innovation challenges, mentoring programs, sandpits that will be involved AI topic as well. Oh my God. And this is a QR code. We all love them, QR codes. So if you want to stay in touch, if you want to learn more about what we're working on, feel free to subscribe. And oh, that's not me. There you go. That was me, technology. So we would love to have you on board, and we are really, really excited. Lots of things are coming soon. Well, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the event. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just quickly wrap things up then and say thank you again for everyone that's come today and for participating. Thank you to all of the speakers, the project showcases, keynotes, and the panel. I want to make a special mention also to our industry advisory board, many of who gave talks today, and also to Dheeren for helping us organize this event. I want to thank our sponsors again, Bentley Education for the coffee cart, which was full, and also to CDH for the networking event, which we are going to go to. And I want to also call out a very, very, very special thank you and a big round of applause to Isabella Harrison for helping us organize this event. Without her, it wouldn't happen. So thank you, Isabella. Thanks, guys. We can move to the foyer, have some nibbles, and again, the demos, exhibits, and talk to each other. The other thing I want to very quickly mention is if you want to talk about how to work with CIAIRI, just very quick example on Sri's question I'm picking up on, Google DeepMinds and the likes versus us as academics. If Julian went to Google DeepMind to get his problem solved for IDOM, I'm not sure he'll make the progress we have made so far, right? Because it's very different, right? We work at different levels and different scales. So if you have industry problems, you guys, please talk to us. I'm sure we can find a way to solve it for you. Thanks.